Perhaps I will begin, if that's okay. Nathan, it's nice to see you, and Dave, it's nice to see you. And perhaps if you want to can this, others might find it interesting, and they might not. The MCA. Hi, Jody. The MCA tests are currently being discussed at the state capitol, with some people believing they should be administered this year and others believing they should not. I'm not, nor will I ever be part of that discussion. But I do believe that it would be important now to document the learning status of students in our schools so that we would have a stronger understanding of the extent to which their learning may not have progressed in the last year. By the same token, administering the MCA tests is a very, very time-oriented challenge. All of the data that I'm going to be talking about today, and I'm going to be talking about two files. One we call the research file that is on my screen right now, and the other one is called a cohort file that follows students from grade to grade and looks at how different grades are progressing. The person that developed this file is a gentleman named Dr. Robert Porter. Bob worked in the Department of Education for, I believe 20 or 20 plus years, and retired recently and has taken a high level of interest in MCA test scores. And if we look at this file, there's what's called a gap essay down here where Bob has talked about the learning gaps in Minnesota. This is the reading gap based on ethnicity, and I am going to make this file available to anybody that wants it. I will simply post it, and you will have to send me an email to receive the link to the posting, and my email address is jim@schoolfinances.com. And if you do send me an email and ask for the file, I will respond to you, and then I will hope that you find it interesting. Okay, the first file is what we call the research file, and on the screen right now are two line graphs that are developed based on these yellow cell input numbers. The first is the district number, school number, group, grade, and subject. Now the district number 9999, you look over here, that's all statewide public schools. We also have group classifications for the C districts, MREA, AMSD, Metro 48 districts, charter schools, metro charters, non-metro charters. So just by changing the groups in the yellow cells, you can determine the graph. I like to do something like this. Let's put a district number in there, and we will use district number 622. And district number 622 is the North St. Paul district. And this then shows, if I put a 1 in here, this shows how the North St. Paul School District fared in relation to the state as a whole over these 13 years. Now, I'm quick to point out that the math scores were changed in 2010, and the reading were changed so that after 2012. So I prefer to look at this just for the last 7 years or so. And it would appear that North St. Paul, this school in math, are falling slightly below the state average. Now, when we put a school district in the first cell, let's put North St. Paul in that cell, 622, we will see all of the schools. Well, just a second here. I guess I have to strike enter to. We will see the different schools in St. Paul right here, so that if we want to enter a school, we just select the school number. If we want to then put in like 624, which happens to be the White Bear Lake School District, we could put that, and we see a list of the White Bear Lake schools so that we could look at the history of the school. Right now, we're looking at the history of all students in North St. Paul versus all schools in White Bear Lake. Now, if we want to look at the groups, let's digress just a little bit and talk about MCA scoring. MCA tests are scored, student scores are level D, does not meet standards, level P partially meets standards, level M meets standards, and level E exceeds standards. The percentage that is graphed above is the students that score in meet standards and exceed standards are totaled here, and that then is used to compute the percentages down here. 34 met the standards, 17% exceeded the standard, so they begin with 51.8%, and the other district in this capacity, the White Bear Lake School District, had 62.7%. So it is those percentages that meet or exceed the standards of the MCA tests that are scored here. Now, as I said, we could look at the grades at the different groups. All students, that is the group code 1. If we just wanted to look at the Black students in these schools, let's do that. This is the Black students in mathematics in those two districts. If I wanted to look at the reading, I would then put 2 in this cell and could look at the reading. It takes it a while to calculate and redo the graphs. So there is the reading. Now, if we wanted to look at a different group, let's look at the Hispanic students in both schools, in both school districts. Now, I use this somewhat as a demographic tool to give me an understanding of the number of students in these different groups that are in our schools. So here for Hispanic students in 622, we had 771 tested in the North St. Paul district, and we had 338 tested in the White Bear Lake district. Now, you must remember that the MCA tests are given to grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then reading is assessed in 10th grade and math in the 11th grade. So this number represents about half of the number of, a little more than half of the number of students in this category in that district. So let's go back to the state as a whole. And the group will go back to all students. And we'll go back to math as first group and reading as the second group. And here now we see that we have, in the most recent year, we tested 448,000 students in math in 2019, and we tested 455,000 in reading. So the way I would use this file if I were in a district, I might say, well, let's look at the third grade students. We have a lot of emphasis right now on early childhood education. But the earliest testing we do in the MCA tests is in the third grade. So this shows the third grade testing results of all students in reading is the red, and all students in math, just the third grade. So then if we wanted to see in the fourth grade, and one would expect that it would be very, 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 very similar. It's sometimes interesting to take a look at let's take a look at the groups of I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to take a look at male and female. Now, people always have big thoughts about who scores better, boys or girls in mathematics. So let's put the groups of the male and the female in mathematics, and you see that there is not a great deal of difference at all. As I said here, Bob originally looked at the gaps. This is the reading gap based on ethnicity, white versus minority. This is the math gap based on ethnicity, white, minority. Or the reading gaps based on income, not low income and low income. And the math gaps based on income are the same. Several years ago, it used to be very popular to say, well, I'm going to reduce the gaps in 8 years. Well, it's easier to say things like that than it is to accomplish it. And Bob, in his essay, talks about some of the comments of Christopher Jinks, and Bob makes some comments about the uselessness of setting unrealistic goals. However, I don't want to disdain goals completely, but it is, I question whether it does any good. The closer you get to an unrealistic goal and seeing that you're not really making the progress that was anticipated. So let's take and do this. Let's put group 1 and let's put in 622, and I'm going to put in group 1. And okay, so now here we have as soon as this calculates and charts. Yes, this is the math for the state as a whole, 999, and the school district, 622. That is the North St. Paul School District. And here I have the schools in North St. Paul. Well, let's suppose that we want to go a little farther, and let's put 624 in there, and let's put a school in for 624. Let's put in school 836. 836. And for North St. Paul, let's put in school 34. And now I'm looking at math. I'm looking at math scores of these schools over this period of time. Now, I like to believe that a local person can look at scores as they progress and identify staff or grade levels that are just doing an outstanding job. And they may identify another school that may not be doing as good a job. It's worthwhile to publicize the schools and the staff that are doing outstanding work and finding ways for some staff training, whether it's a neighboring district or whether it's in your own district. Now, if I wanted to go a little farther, okay, now we have these two, and we see here in one of these schools, we had 192 students tested, and in the other one, 232 tested. Let's zero it down a little bit more and just look at, let's say, grade 7. Now we're going to look at these same two schools. Whoops, that didn't work out very well. Let's look at grade 3. And it's not going to allow, yes, it is going to allow me to do that. Now in grade 3, we had 61 students in one school and 74 in another. So likely these two schools each have 3 sections. Each have 3 sections in the 3rd grade, and you can see that the scores or the percentages of proficiency vary quite a bit. And that was kind of the reason that we decided to develop the next file. Before I move to that file, if any of you have any questions on this, maybe I'll do just a couple more things with this. I maintain within this file, there are probably 50 doctoral dissertations that one could do. I'm working with one gentleman now that is studying achievement gaps. But let's look at all MREA students versus all AMSD students. So that would be a comparison of achievement for 8003 and 8004. 8003. And while I am entering these, you might give some thought to what do you think you're going to find when we compare metropolitan AMSD students with out-of-state students? What do you think you're going to see? That's what I like to do. and then see if, well, here it is. AMSD, all schools in math, MREA, all schools in math. I guess one of those has the AMSD has 209,000 students tested, and the MREA had 115,000 students tested. So that's one analysis. Let's look at reading to see if there's any larger difference between these. No, my goodness, they're still almost exactly the same, which is refreshing in some ways. What if we look at all public schools, statewide public, versus all charter schools? Or I guess I want to look at all charter schools versus all districts. So that would be 8006, 8006, and 8007. And we find that the public schools students that are 420,000 students strong are scoring higher than the charter schools that have 29 students that were tested in 2019. Let's change this to metro charters versus non-metro charters. 8008 versus 8009 in reading. This is the, okay, so here we find that the non-metro charters are scoring higher than the metro charters. So now that you see the groups and you see the different groupings here and the grades and the schools, now when you put a district number in here, you get a list of the schools that are in these. If you want to go farther, there's a worksheet in this that has all of the districts and schools in the state. One is by district number, and the other is alphabetically by the school name. So there's no reason not to be able to find the group that you want to review. So seeing as there's just 4 of you on this presentation, if any of you would unmute yourselves and say, take a look at this or that, I will do it, just to show you how easy it is. Can any of you think of any you'd like to look at? Well, I don't see any of you unmuting yourself, so I guess I'm going to take that as a no, and kind of assume that you know the availability of this file through 2019. There were no tests last year. There's discussion of having a longer window for testing in 21, and then this data is not available until the Department of Education has it available and posts it on their website. It's very simple. You just populate the yellow cells and hit enter, and the file takes care of itself. The next file I'm going to look at and discuss some is a file that we call our cohort file. And that file looks like this. Again, the yellow cells are the same. They're the data entry cells for looking at these cohort. And a cohort, if I follow a statewide, all students in math, statewide, all students in reading, if I start in grade 3, I don't know that the students are exactly the same as they move to the next year, but it's the best we have. It's the 3rd grade students in 2006, the 4th grade in 2007, the 5th grade in 2008, the 6th grade in 2009, the 7th grade in 2010, and the 11th grade in 2011. Now in math, there was no test. There is no test in grade 9 or 10, and this is how they scored in grade 11 after that. So you can see that the proficiencies are decreasing, and you will see that the proficiencies in math are decreasing as we go from grade to grade. So if you were in a school district, you might want to know if the students in your district were progressing at the same decreasing level as the state, or whether they were doing a little stronger or a little poorer. Let's go ahead and put in a district here. I don't have any preconceived notion on this, but I worked in the Rochester School District for many years, and the Rochester School District has changed some in the last many years, but it appears that their grade 3. The Rochester School District's grade 3 was stronger. And however, in 2019 and 2018, their grade 3 students were not as strong as on a statewide basis. Nor were they this year. They were a little bit stronger in this year. So now on a total basis, Rochester students in mathematics are scoring poorer than on the statewide basis. And every year here, 60.1, here's a year that they were scoring higher. If I wanted to change this around, I'll show you how this file works. And I put in 9999, I'm sorry, in the second category, and put in 535 in the top category. What happens is that the district schools in Rochester populate in this area. So let's suppose that I want to test just Churchill Elementary. I would put in 116, and I would look at Churchill Elementary School, which happens to be up very close to where I live. And I see that they perhaps did not have enough students in that area to do it. So let's put in another school. Let's put in one of the, well, let's put in 110. There we are. And this school is Bamber Valley. And Bamber Valley had, I look below this, they had 149 students tested. And as we progress over the years, they went 84 down to 77, down to 77. That's quite a strong showing. Statewide, it went 77 to 70 to 66. In the most recent year, they were still stronger in 2018 by 10%. So it may be more fair here if I put in 535 here and put in another school. Let's take Falwell Elementary. And Falwell Elementary. So now you see I can compare the proficiency results for two schools in the same district, or I could compare two schools in different districts. And it might be nice if we looked in each of these. These look to be where we're testing 139, about 6 section schools. Each of these, the top school, Bamber Valley, is about a 6-section school. I consider a section at about 25 students, although some are higher. And these would be 2 sections or 3 sections, I don't know. But it provides an opportunity to have a dialogue with the staff to see how they compare to others that might be valuable for complimenting teachers for doing an excellent job, and also for saying, are there some things that we could do to improve how we're scoring in this area? Now, the chart over here shows how you compare entity 1 and entity 2, and that takes a little bit of time to study if you were planning to use that. So that pretty much, if there are no questions, that pretty much covers these files. 1 is the research file, and 2 was the cohort file. And I believe that there is strong value in comparing on a statewide basis, for comparing all students on a statewide basis. And it takes a while for this, based on the speed of your computer, for this file to populate. However, it has done statewide math. Let's go statewide math and statewide reading. Again, I would try to respond to any questions or show you how these or we could look at any of these groups. English language learners. We can look at all minorities. We have a little difficulty when we use all minorities, because all minorities also include Asian students, and Asian students. Well, let's just compare white students here. 7 with 3. and let's compare it in mathematics. So here we're going to compare Asian students. I guess I would be better off having done something like this on the research file if I were to compare all the students in the state in the group of 3 versus 7 in mathematics. So you can see that the white students are scoring stronger than the Asian, but the Asian students in this minority group are much stronger than the students in an example of, I see I didn't have the same, I should have had it all in math here. So if I were to compare the Asian students 3 with the Hispanic students 5, you'll see a larger difference. So there's an abundance of data here that districts have made available through the MCA testing that allow us to look at. We can look at individual charter schools if we want, and we can look at metro charters or non-metro charters, and we can always refer back to the number of students that are tested and how groups 3 and 4 total together to make those that meet the criterion for proficiency. And I'm going to make 2 of these slides available. One is this one, and the other one is the cohort file that would be available for a handout by MASA. And again, I will repeat, if anybody is working on a degree or a paper and they would like to study a little bit more how the proficiencies in their school district stack up to those in another category, you can pull that data right off here and write your hypotheses, pull the data off, and write your observations and conclusions based on this. And if you ask me at the right time, I'd be more than happy to help anyone study achievement in Minnesota schools. Thank you for your time today, David, and that's going to kind of conclude it for this session.